Okay, let's go.
Welcome back to the History Coach. Today we're going to be covering Unit 3.3, the Empire's Belief Systems. They can hold empires together or they can break them up quick. So let's talk about Christianity. Let's talk about Islam. Those are the religions that held these empires together. In the past couple of videos, we talked about how these empires expanded and maintained their power from 1450 to 1750. Now we know, expanding militaries played a big role, as did expanding bureaucracies. But today, we're going to talk about how religions both supported imperial power and even challenged it. So let's head over to Europe and let's focus on Christianity. We know Christianity had been a dominant religion in Europe since the 4th century. And it was present even before that time. We know how Christianity was that glue for those living all throughout Europe. So we know in the 11th century, a bunch of big-time church leaders started to argue over doctrine. So this is where we see the massive split in Christianity. So remember the Roman Empire. Now in the East, you have Eastern Orthodox, and the Eastern Orthodox Church. In the West, you have the Roman Catholic Church. This was known as the Great Schism of 1054. Oh, this will be the last and only time that the Christian faith fights over doctrine, right? So right around our time period, 1450 to 1750, we see the power of the Catholic Church. We see the power of these popes, but they're clashing with that key term known as absolutism. They know that they are going to face off with these very powerful kings that emerged after the fall of feudalism. Oh, and how do you flex your muscle? You build the Palace of Versailles, you build St. Peter's Basilica. So they are vying, kings and popes, on who can flex their power. So how do you fund these church projects? Well, you start selling indulgences. So the people of Europe can purchase these little pieces of paper that will forgive their sins. So the church started to partake in a handful of corrupt practices. All right, it is not pretty. They even partook in simony, putting up church property for sale. Remember, land shows power and status. Who's going to put a stop to all of this? Will it be Superman? Will it be the Avengers? Who is going to come to the aid of the common person? It's not a bird. It's not a plane. It's Martin Luther? Wait, Martin Luther King Jr.? No, Martin Luther, a Catholic monk who spent his life studying Christianity. So he came out and said, wait a second, this ain't cool. You should not practice simony. You should not practice the sale of indulgences. So in comes Martin Luther's 95 Theses. What are the 95 Theses, History Coach? Well, to put things in short, the 95 Theses that Martin Luther posted on the church at Wittenberg, Germany, pretty much states 95 things the church should not be doing. 95 complaints. Don't worry, nothing's going to happen to Martin Luther. Wrong. The church is going to denounce everything he said and they're going to excommunicate him. Oh, you mean like excommunicato in John Wick? Now, don't think that Martin Luther was the first and only member of the church to speak out against these injustices of the Catholic Church. But it was the 95 Thesis and these complaints that split the Catholic Church into two. In comes the Protestant Reformation, or to reform. Can you guess why Martin Luther was such a trailblazer? What did he have at his disposal that could spread these ideas of the abuses of the Catholic Church to masses around Europe and possibly the world? He had Twitter. He had Facebook. No, he had the printing press. So how does the Catholic Church respond? Well, you know what? They come out and kind of understand and accept that their practices are not perfect. So why not have a Catholic Reformation? Or better known as the Counter-Reformation. So the church met in a series of meetings known as the Council of Trent. So they tossed out numerous things that they had been previously practicing, like I talked about. Now, at the Council of Trent, they did accept responsibility for a handful of corrupt practices, but at the council, they also understood that they needed to get back to original doctrine, nature of biblical authority, salvation by faith and works. So by saying, yeah, we've been corrupt, but don't forget our basic tenets, that really solidified the split between Catholics and now Protestants. And they also reaffirmed that Martin Luther was a heretic and what he was saying was a bunch of malarkey. So how did the other powers of Europe react to this split in the Catholic Church? Well, a handful of these leaders remained Roman Catholic, or they instituted or imposed Protestantism on the people that they ruled. Remember, in these empires, religion also served as a political entity as well. It's a continuity. So you declare to your people that we are either Catholic or we are now Protestant, both Christian, but due to this second schism or Protestant Reformation, nations became a religion also based around a political force. Let's make an about face and look at Islam in the Middle East. During this time period, what are the two large Islamic empires in the Middle East? We know it's the Ottomans and the Safavids. And both of these Islamic empires, which shared major borders, they totally got along. Did we just become best friends? You're darn tootin' we did. Even though religion was a continuity, you have to understand there's going to be a big split between this large Islamic faith. Oh, and we have talked about this split. It started all the way back in the 7th century. So, when Muhammad died in the 7th century, the big question was, who's going to be the head coach? Or who's going to be the rightful successor? So, when Muhammad died, we've all talked about this in the previous topics, who was going to be that successor? Was it going to be his father-in-law, Abu Bakr? Or did this next caliph need to come from the bloodline of Muhammad? Well, we definitely know After Muhammad united the Bedouin tribes and the oasis towns, he created this large empire in the Middle East. He dies, Abu Bakr ends up taking over. Now, this is the start of the Sunni Muslims. Sunnis today are the world's largest branch or sect of Islam. But as time went on, corruption and wealth started to infect these Islamic empires, such as the Umayyads or the Abbasids, okay? And even the Mongols in the Ilkhanate, year after year, they understood who is going to truly be the devout caliph. Thousands of Muslims living around the world felt that it actually should be a caliph from the bloodline of Muhammad, the founder. So then you have Shia Muslims. Okay, Shia Muslims are the lower percentage or the minority of Muslims living today. You would think it would be opposite, where the original founder bloodline relatives should be the majority. Well, that's not the case. Sunnis, all right, descendants of Abu Bakr, Muhammad's father-in-law, they are the majority around the world today. So that division was on full display within this time period we're covering, okay? The Safavid, they were Shia. And in the Ottoman Empire, remember, they shared borders, they were Sunni. So they're going to get along like peaches and cream. Wrong! They will fight for centuries over territory, over doctrine, over secession. Remember, they shared borders. Now, yes, it was a religious rivalry, but it really intensified when politics and land and borders and power became involved. Now let's shift our attention to South Asia. Now remember, India, very, very diverse when it comes to culture, religion, politics in the Mughal dynasty. And so, since the beginning of Unit 1, we know Islam has held the majority in Mughal India, even though the majority of the population was Hindu. So in this time period, there's going to be two religious movements that are going to try to bridge that gap between Islam and Hinduism. First was the Bhakti movement, which emerged its head in India in the 7th century. Now, we know it was a branch of Hinduism, but it emphasized the belief on many gods, emphasized the spiritual walk with the religion. Now, Islam had their own Bhaktis. They were known as Sufis. They practiced Sufism. Yes, Bhaktis, Sufis, they both shared very similar aspects of mysticism, devotion. Sufis had the whirling dervish. They almost transformed themselves into the movement itself. So remember, okay, these movements tried to blend Islam and Hinduism together. So in India, you've got Bhaktis and Sufis. Then you have another element of Hinduism and Islam. You have Sikhism. They both practiced elements of Hinduism and Islam. Now remember, these belief systems can hold an empire together or they can break empires apart. So in units 1 and 2, we have seen this continuity and stability of religion play a major role. They're holding empires together. But in comes the change. You could see the change with the Protestant Reformation, the reaction to the Catholic counter-Reformation. You also see early on in the 7th century the split in Islam between Sunnis and Shias. And in India, trying to come together, you have elements of Hinduism and Islam, such as Sufism, the Bhakti movement, and Sikhism, all in an effort to, just like Akbar wanted, unity and tolerance within a vast empire. All right, that's topic 3.3, the empire's belief systems. Thanks for tuning in, and let's move on to AP World History 3.4.